Hello, my name's Kyle. Welcome to the next session of the Storybook Test Bootcamp. This week, schedule shows that we're covering accessibility tests, so let's get right into it. As usual, we've got a new guide that we just published. The guide walks you through everything about testing the accessibility of your components within Storybook. That's done through an add-on, the official accessibility or ALLY, A11Y add-on. So it walks you through how to install it, gives a brief overview of what that add-on does, which I'm going to show in a demo in just a minute. But then it also shows how it integrates with the test add-on or Storybook Test that we've been showing. So let's jump right into that demo. So I have the same Storybook I've been demoing here with my ShadCN UI components. And the testing widget down here, you'll see that accessibility is disabled, despite the fact that this project has the accessibility add-on and all the configuration it needs. And that's because I have to click this pencil icon and enable it. So if you see that, just know you click the pencil, enable it. Now I can run my tests, which is going to run component tests, as it always has. And now it's going to also run accessibility checks alongside those component tests. We can see we have two warnings here, not errors, and I'll explain that in a second. But first, let's look at these warnings. So I'm going to filter it down to just the warning. It's these two stories here. I'm going to go, so component test passed. The accessibility is showing a warning. So if I do that, oh look, I have a violation. I have a color contrast ratio issue. So let's highlight those results and see what the element is. It's these table headers here. Now, full disclosure, ShadCN UI components they're fully accessible. They're great. I made this fake just to show the example. So I don't want to trash talk ShadCN components. They're excellent. So when I save this, and then I can do a focused run here to run just these two again. Now you see they pass. Not sure why that didn't. Okay, so they pass. We've got a full bill of health for the accessibility of our components, at least as far as automated checks can check. There is a bunch of accessibility that can only be verified like manually by clicking around. So yeah, but about 60% can be checked automatically, and that's what the add-on does. Now I did say warnings versus errors, so let's put that back. And this time, before I run the checks, I'm going to change my parameters.ally.test, and I'm doing this in the preview. So that's Storybook's configuration for every story in the project. I'm going to change this value from to do, which will still show the violations in the test UI, but it will show them as warnings, to errors, which is now going to show an error instead of a warning. And when I run these tests in CI, which we've shown how to do previously, it's going to fail in CI as well if there are any errors. So let's change this to error and rerun. So now you can see I have two errors, same as before. Just wanted to show you that difference because this is really key to a workflow that I'm going to walk through in just a second. I also wondered if you notice this to skipped label down here in the test widget. And that is informing us that two of these stories had their accessibility checks skipped. So if I go to my page, that's because I used the off value on that parameters.ally.test value. And that just skips the ALLY checks entirely. However, we don't want you to skip things and not have notice of it. And so we tell you if you've skipped anything. So that's what's going on there. Now, that workflow that I mentioned. When you're using the tests, I started with like completely from scratch ShadCN UI components, which I said are accessible. And so in this case, there were only the like two fake errors. But in a real application, especially if you haven't been addressing accessibility as you go, and instead you're just like, okay, we're finally going to make this application accessible. Let's do it. You're going to turn on the add-on and you're going to run the tests, and you're probably going to have a lot of results in that sidebar. whether they're warnings or errors, however you have it configured. It might be a little overwhelming. And so we have a workflow that we recommend to be able to make progress without being overwhelmed. So what you do first is you just you run it with the error mode just to make sure everything fails with errors. And take note, don't get too overwhelmed, and then take note of any components, like my calendar here, that do have errors. So like literally pen and paper or in your editor, write down, all right, my calendar has errors. Then, going back to the workflow, then we're going to, for those components, we're going to change the alley parameter from error to do. So I'm going to go to my calendar stories. I'm going to add my alley parameter test and change that to do. And what that's going to do is now these errors, as they were, they'll fail CI, which is what we want for any component that's currently passing, and if it changes to not pass, we probably want that to fail CI. Or any new work that we're putting in, any new components we're adding, we want those to error and fail CI. But these that we know have issues that we know we want to work on, we don't want those to block our forward progress. And so when I change that to do and run my test again, now you can see they're just warnings. So they're not going to block our CI. They're not going to prevent us from pushing and releasing and that sort of stuff. They're just going to tell us, hey, there's work here to be done. And that's why we chose this to-do word for that value, is because they literally function as to-dos. So like when you do a find in your project for to-do, that's going to show up right there. And so it's kind of a to-do list for your accessibility work to be done. And so you just, you fix the things in that particular component. And then once you've got them all fixed, so I'm going to go to my calendar. I'm going to get rid of my accessibility issue here. And then we'll run my tests just to confirm that it fixed. Okay, so it fixed. So now I want those things to fail CI, and so I'm just going to remove that temporary to do. And now if there wasn't an error, it would truly be an error, and it would block CI, and it would properly block the release. So that's kind of the workflow that we recommend using Storybook while you're testing accessibility, to not be overwhelmed by too many errors as you're trying to make forward progress. Just go component by component. And we do recommend starting with something simple like button, which is oftentimes used within a more complex thing like this calendar component. And by doing that, if you fix the issues in button, you're going to fix the issues that also show up from button inside of calendar or login form or wherever else that button is used. And so start simple, go complex, and you'll find that you make a big impact really fast that way. That's all I have for you. Good luck testing the accessibility of your components. And as always, let us know whether in the Discord or replying to email, whether you have any issues or have any questions. We're happy to chat. Have a great week.